Hello, this is attempt number 2 at honing my story. This is not the shortened version, but I think I'm trying to get the spirit of the message right. So here goes. I grew up in poverty. Nothing was convenient. I learned that if we wanted to eat, we worked for it. We grew food in the garden. We raised goats for milk, chickens for eggs, and rabbits for meat. We hung clothes on the line to dry. We worked to survive. My father was an alcoholic, a drug addict, a Vietnam War vet. My mother was such a strong woman, working the land, raising children, finding ways to get by. When I was 6 years old, we moved from the shack we had lived in to 8 acres of land in the wooded swamplands in North Florida. We lived in a 25-foot trailer with no hookups. There was no plumbing, no running water, no heat in the winter. It was a milestone when we got the outhouse, a step up from the post hole diggers. Looking back now, I see that life was hard. At the time, I was just a kid who could run through the woods barefoot. At 8 years old, my parents divorced. We went with my mother to live with her parents, my Mimi and Dada. Their home was good, stable, a sanctuary for my mother to pick herself up, and routine for us kids. During the weekends, we would go back to the swamps to stay with my dad. Over the years, he deteriorated more into his addictions and abusive behavior. When I was a young teenager, not old enough to drive yet, I experienced 3 traumas in quick succession. Number 1, I was raped by a man who was almost 40 years old, and that resulted in pregnancy and abortion. I burned with shame and had never told anyone I was raped. Number 2, I was in a car accident, a passenger in a car driven by another teenager. I went through the windshield with my head, and I suffered a severe brain injury that left me unable to walk by myself for a couple of months, impaired my memory function, and academically knocked me down from testing at second-year college level prior to the accident to 5th grade levels after the accident. I was angry, despairing, physically broken. I lashed out at people who were trying to help me. Number 3, my dad died tragically in a car accident. He was drunk and he had goaded someone into racing him. He died on Father's Day. I was devastated. I felt his death was my fault because when he used to come home after being gone for weeks on a bender, he would say that seeing the picture he kept of me on his dashboard was the reason he came home. I wasn't enough to bring him home this time. Can you even imagine how incredibly difficult I must have been as a teenager after all of that? Yikes. My mother earned her sainthood by dealing with me during this time, that's for sure. I was a teenager carrying around a secret, burning with shame, boiling with rage at the unfairness of my brain injury, and sinking into despair with a belief that I was not enough. I started doing drugs. I blew off school. I was depressed and I was spiraling. I was on a train that was inevitably going to go off the rails. During this time, I had an English teacher named Mr. Ricklick. He was a teacher with heart and courage imagination, and devotion, and he changed my life. We had been studying Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay, Self-Reliance. We were delving into the power of choice. One day, Mr. Ricklick held me after class and confronted me with this question. Do you think your dad would want you to suffer like him? Or would he want you to choose better? That really shook me. It drove home the lesson that choice matters a great deal, and we always have a choice. He helped me see that I had a choice, and my choices were shaping my life. We may not choose everything that happens to us, but we can damn well choose how we are going to handle it. I woke up. That changed the trajectory that I was on. I started applying myself, and by my senior year, I had a 4.0 grade point average. I was the student body president and had earned a full ride academic scholarship to any state university in Florida. Mr. Ricklick spoke for me at my high school graduation. During the commencement ceremony, he shared how when he met me, he was worried. He was worried I would not be able to pull myself from the circumstances that I found myself in. Yet over the next few years, he watched me apply myself with determination and spirit, overcome and achieve, and choose better. Life is precious. It can be forever altered or taken away at any moment. Are you going to waste it? Who are you going to be? Choose better. Well, my story didn't end there. I had this burning desire to prove I was enough. I was geared to achieve, to never again have a hard life. Staying in the swamps of sadness was not for me. Leaving my full ride scholarship, I moved to Colorado, where I landed a job at a background checking company, and I sat next to this cute guy who became my husband. I went to night school and earned a Bachelor of Science in Human Resource Management with a minor in Leadership Studies. We had 2 kids, and we both built successful 20-year corporate careers. I rose in the ranks, becoming a corporate executive leader. There were great things along the way, and I was living a successful life by all standards. Sounds like a happily ever after, right? It wasn't. My story didn't end there either. I felt like maybe it was just the beginning, because despite all my success, I was not okay emotionally. I was deeply depressed. I loved my people, but the job had become soulless and consuming, and the culture had become destructive. I burned out and my body got sick. It was emotionally and physically debilitating. I felt like a failure. I cried every day between these endless, meaningless meetings. I found myself back on that scary train. It was inevitably going to go off of the rails. If I stayed this course, it was going to slowly kill me. My heartbeat carried that old familiar mantra. Life is precious. It can be gone at any moment. Are you going to waste it? Who are you going to be? Choose better. Wanting to learn how to be happy and desperately trying to salvage what I thought my life should be, I began a Master of Arts in Happiness Studies program, a program about the art of living well, the elements of whole person well-being, how to discover what works for you, and how to help others do the same for themselves. So the funny thing is, rather than helping me be okay with my job, I discovered that that job was no longer right for me. I also discovered that I was holding on to and hiding my shame. I still had that secret. I still had never told anyone I was raped. I was holding on to all of this pain and anger from when I was a teenager. I was afraid of it. But it was time to write my story. As I wrote my story, I told the truth of my past. It was no longer hidden. I felt and accepted the anger and discovered how to give myself compassion. I confronted the belief that I was not enough, and I began to understand where that came from and that it was not true. As I worked through this process, I slowly became whole, not by fixing or hiding, but by revealing, accepting, mending, and redeeming. I rediscovered myself. A calling flared to life within me. Show others how to accept themselves and become whole. Build a community of connection and belonging and meaning where people can learn whole being. We all have hurts. Things happen in life. Hiding in shame doesn't change the fact that it happened. Running from hurt and pain doesn't change the fact that it happened. Anger doesn't change the fact that it happened. And resisting and ignoring all of those painful emotions just doesn't change the fact that it happened. We must accept all of who we are, embrace our emotions, learn from them, and then make the choice of what we are going to do with it. Life is precious. It can be gone at any moment. Are you going to waste it? Who are you going to be? Choose better.